Hi, I'm Greg Cummings, CEO of Power 100 and your host of Power Chat. We are joined by Chris Pallatroni with Modernize and Quinn Street. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for everybody out there that's maybe like, hey, who is this? Who's Chris? What's his backdrop? Instead of me just explaining it, can you give like a high level of who you are and maybe kind of how you got here?
Yeah, well, I'll try to compress 20 some odd years in like a minute here. But yeah, Chris Pallatroni, one of the original co-founders of Modernize, digital marketing company supporting the home services industry. Um, my journey here goes way back to pre-2005 when we used to be contractors. Realize the need to generate leads for your business, whether you're a small business or a big business. I mean, the lifeblood of your company is just getting good qualified leads. And so, yeah, we started a digital marketing company way back in the day. I think I've done everything in this business, from knocking on doors to running the account management team. I've spent a lot of my time working directly with the contractor, so both on the sales side and the account management side. 2020, we sold the company to Quinn Street, so we're part of a much larger organization at this point. And Greg, I say I've got like one of the funnest jobs in the company at this point. So I support the executives of some of the biggest brands in the nation, and then I oversee the entire sales division of the company as well. So my job is to broker partnerships, find the win for the contractor, and continue to grow.
So it is amazing what you all have built, what you started, what you built, and then now with the influx of Quinn Street, what you've been able to do over the last couple of years. Just on a high level, again, before we get into the weeds, like who is Modernize? Like what's the top line sentence of who Modernize is today?
If I'm being pretty playful, I like to say it's sort of like Match.com for contractors. It's taking a homeowner and it's as simple as making a connection to a local contractor. I mean, it really doesn't have to be more complex than that. Now, with that said, we are a technology company. We are performance marketing, so digital marketing. Anything with the click of a button is really where we play ball. And we operate in 22 different categories. We have about 50 million homeowners that come through our web properties every year. That generates about 8 million leads. Probably the most important number from our perspective is we facilitate through our contractors about $2 billion in installed sales per year. But once again, playfully, it's just Match.com. It's just finding homeowners that want to do home improvement, connecting them to contractors that do just that, and supporting the whole ecosystem.
So that was $2 billion in home improvement revenue?
Yeah. Now, obviously, we procure the lead, and then we pass that lead along to one of our home service partners in a variety of different categories. And then they're scheduling the appointment, they're booking the work, and then we track that data feedback loop so that we understand the performance of every lead we pass through. And then it comes out to about $2 billion a year in installed sales.
That's a nice round number. Who is your ideal client like out there? Is it a multi, million or, $100 million company, or is it Johnny Windows, down the street that's doing 600,000?
It's a really good question. I've seen it all. I've seen guys that are working on a plyboard desk with a rotary phone and they're just scrappy. And that's a perfect client for us. I've seen companies with, an office made out of gold with a blank PE check, and they couldn't connect the dots to save their life. I've really seen it all. So in general, especially when I'm working with our sales team, the number one thing that I teach them is it's mindset above all else. Infrastructure goes a long way. So people with good technology, good standard operating procedures, like that carries a lot of weight in the ability to turn a lead into a customer, but there's nothing that trumps the way you think about it. So the first thing we look for, to get to your question specifically, is just people that believe in digital marketing and need more opportunities. Like those are great customers for us.
Yeah. And it's important to kind of diversify how you're getting your leads these days, right? And not to put all your eggs in one basket, or do you say, no, just come over to Modernize and let us do all the work?
Once again, man, I've been at this so long. I've seen companies that, they swear to God, it's all they do is PPC. I've seen publicly traded companies just knock on doors. I'm not going to say you need to diversify, but look, even those guys that were just knocking on doors, COVID hit. It's harder to knock on a door when COVID hit. And so diversity, diversifying helped at that point. Look, I tell contractors all the time, man, do as many different things that doesn't spread you too thin. And if something works, work it until it doesn't work no more, or work it at least into the point that you can't extract any more from it. And if your growth goals continue to exceed some of the marketing channels you currently have, you should probably layer in some more. Sometimes that's layering and modernize, and there's times where it's not layering and modernize. Like our sales philosophy is not sign a company up. Our sales philosophy is be a good consultant and help them make the best decision for where they're at that time. If that means to work with us, hey, we'll fight for your business. If it doesn't mean to work with us, there's nothing wrong with that as well. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, so I understand when y'all started off, it was the hustle. It went from the door knocking to the Excel spreadsheets to, some version of in between then and now, and then where you all are at like right now. So what would a customer of Modernize expect that kind of UI UX experience with you all compared to some other forms of lead, I guess, at the end of the day?
I don't know if it's for better.
That's another way to ask it would be, other than the lead itself, what advantages does Modernize offer?
Yeah, well, as far as like what advantages we offer compared to, we'll just say like competition. In all honesty, Greg, I really don't pay attention to like who's else out there. There's so many good forms of marketing. Like, my job is not to say you should spend your money with us versus somebody else. It's you spend it where you're getting the best return. Now, the question is a great question. That's one I actually ask a lot of clients. So the feedback that I typically receive is, one, our data analysis, our analytics is really, really superior. Like, we are built as a technology. We can compare not only like lead flow and conversion rates from one company to the next, in one market to the next market, but we are really good at synthesizing data and helping find ways to optimize campaigns. So that's a huge thing. I'd say the other thing is our account management team. I mean, we are like, our team is very senior. I mean, we have people on our team 20 years in the making. We have, some that have been here a year, but the vast majority of our account managers, which are, the people that manage the account, but they manage a book of business of like 5 to 15 very large size companies. So their best practices and really guiding a brand to like maximize the value of our product is pretty superior. We can't share, hey, this is what your competitor does, but what we can do is we can sort of aggregate all the best practices, from calling practices to closing practices to optimizing campaigns, and we can sort of distill that down in a very agnostic way to say, hey, these are the things that are going to move the lever on your business. So analytics, account management, and look, I get involved, and a lot of our senior leaders get really involved in these relationships. So it takes a village to raise these partners.
Yeah, no doubt. So on cue with levers and KPIs and areas of the business, if you're looking at the most successful businesses in today's market in the home improvement space, what are their non-negotiables? What is their, fall on a sword KPI or metric that they're operating by?
I would say the vast majority, it comes down to like cost of acquisition or cost to acquire a customer. Like, those are like the telltales as to like, should we keep spending money? As you start to move like up the sales funnel, obviously close rates become important, but most contractors will say, look, it's really the lead to appointment conversion or appointment to demo conversion, different nomenclature for different industries, but the cost to get into a consumer's house. That's really where most contractors say, look, your job is just to help us get in the door. We'll worry about closing rates. And, maybe that's true to some extent, but at the end of the day, if all you do is get in the door but never close any business, like, you're probably not going to keep that campaign running for long. But cost of marketing, cost to acquire customer are the telltale. But yeah, I mean, the only other clarity that I would really add to there is like, really good contractors get really good at creating a repeatable process to turn a lead into a customer. So I like to say that, like, if the process is not standardized, the data is compromised. And the reason that I say that is because if you think about like going to Starbucks and ordering a cup of coffee, or In-N-Out Burger, or whatever, really systematized franchise is, if they don't do it the same way every time, then the end result deviates a little bit. And you wouldn't want to have your latte at Starbucks one way, one day at one location, and then a different way, a different day, a different location. And so what we try to remind contractors is, to the best of your ability, the speed to lead, the call frequency, the scripting, the email, the text message. I mean, lots of little tiny things that like all roll up into the consumer experience. The more you can standardize that process, then when you actually get the data and you start to say like what's working and what's not working, there's a lot of integrity in that data. But if you do it different every single time, by location, by trade, by CSR rep, by salesperson, then the data may be directionally accurate at best. So you really do need to like standardize your process. And the more you can do that, there's a lot of integrity in the data, which just allows you to make better, more intelligent decisions.
Not only that, it'll equate to a significantly better company culture, which will bleed into customer service, project management, all the way
Sure.
down the line. So, from there, I think the big topic that every single CEO has asked me when I got on the phone with them is, what are you seeing? What are you hearing about leads? Like, hey,
oh man,
are they down? What is Utah like? What's Florida like? What's Maryland like? What's New York like? What's Ohio like? I mean, I keep going. Texas, Oklahoma. I mean,
yeah.
What should we expect from your perspective? You've been doing leads now, Chris, for a long time. You're an industry expert on leads, right? What should we expect as an industry moving into the second half of this year with, obviously an election year and beyond?
Well, I mean, just to tackle the election year. I mean, I think we all know in election years, some media becomes a little bit more noisy. Radio and TV just become more noisy in election years. There's just no way around that. With that said, look, there are plenty of leads out there to be had. And it's so interesting because no matter what year I've ever done this, you'll definitely get people like, hey, there's the market has softened a little bit, or it's harder to get people to spend money in home improvement. And look, I'm not going to pretend I know every single geo across the country. You're certainly going to run into that, and sometimes it's harder to get somebody to spend money on Windows, and it's easier for HVAC. Like we're going to run the gamut here. However, if we cannot always just focus on like the sale today. And this is a hard thing, I think, in home improvement where, look, you want to buy a lead and you want the lead to turn into an appointment, and you want the appointment to turn into a job relatively quickly. And that's always the case. What I've always argued from day one is get good at your lead nurturing process. Hey, if Greg comes in on the website today and he says, hey, I'm interested in Windows, and you don't land the business today for whatever reason, you don't know, maybe he's thinking about braces for the kid or the summer vacation. There's lots of competing things that are fighting for the consumer's dollars. Don't worry about that. Create a good system in which you can follow up with Greg through email, through a phone call, through a direct mail piece. And you may be saying as a contractor like, yeah, but I need the business today, and that's true. But if you have that good lead nurturing process and you're very good at over the course of a year, a decade, then the Greg that came in 2 years ago who wasn't prepared to pull the trigger on said project, you create this remarketing campaign that doesn't require a tremendous amount of human power, maybe just some automation, and you build a really good lead nurturing process so that the Greg 2 years ago may be ready to buy today. So I think for contractors, like I see this a lot of times I won't mention the company, I have a local guy. I remember, and it was the same way, he got my business. I was like, where's my Christmas card, man? Like, where's asking for the referral? Some of the really basic stuff that we know as contractors we should be doing. Yeah. So to your original question is like, is it the market soft? No, there's tons of leads out there. There's plenty of business to be had, but if you're going to acquire the consumer's information, whether you're buying a lead or you're knocking on a door or however it may comes about, create a really good nurturing process so that you can incubate those leads over the course of time. You do that well, there's so much money in your database.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's so important for contractors to hear that right now, because especially like the leaders, the CEOs, the owners, they get this feedback up that the leads are bad, because we have the sales reps out there that they have this like built-in excuse, right? Like, hey, no, these leads just aren't as good. And all of a sudden you manifest that, right? And now you're approaching all these appointments a little bit differently. because now you're afraid that, oh, it's an election year. Oh, people are going to tighten up. Oh, whatever it is. It's like, no, it's not. Like, there is plenty of business out there. And if the companies have the good foundation from, I call it the great reorganization. So after COVID, we had to then reorganize back to reality. And if you didn't reorganize your persistence, process, and technologies back to reality of going in the home and just off the back of COVID, then you're probably a little bit more nervous because you don't know. But when you have your different lead sources out there, it's probably split right down the middle. I have half the people that I talk to, half the leaders and CEOs I talk to, they're looking to grow by 10, 20, 30. I talked to one guy yesterday. He's literally looking to double in the next 18 months. So 18 months, over 18 months, he's looking to double 100%. And that's a massive jump over this time period. But his philosophy was, we're set. Like, our trajectory is set. We have the systems in place. We have the people in place. We have the partners in place. We know what we're doing, and we're fully dedicated to this. They realize that there's enough business out there to go get. So while everyone else is pulling off the gas because they're going into that prevent defense, there's companies like that are using you and others to actually reinvest even more in a bigger budget, because they see that as the competition can't afford to go into, reinvest in their business. So my question to you on that long-winded thing, are you seeing the same trend that I'm seeing, where some companies are doubling down and upping their budget and other companies are dialing back on their budget?
But that was always the case. I mean, look, man, when we first started the company, like, it was tough because there was no brands we represented. It's like, you're like, hey, who do you work with? Now, if you literally took a look at our roster, I mean, it is the who's who of the industry. I mean, we have spent 19 years building relationships with every major brand. And I'll jokingly say to a CEO, I'm like, look, man, as much as like a lot of these companies will like us, it's not the liking of us that keeps them buying our product. It's the economics.
Yeah.
It just is. Like, you won't keep spending millions of dollars a year if the economics are not there. And so, yes, to your point, we see plenty of companies. I mean, I got a bathroom company. I'm good friends with their president, and I've seen him go from 3 different companies, billion-dollar brands. And then he got mixed up with these guys, or I should say they were friends of his, and he got an opportunity to be a CEO. And I mean, this company in 2 years, year 1, 0 to 25 mil. In year 2, they're going to hit $100 million in the first 24 months of being around. Now, like, that's not your average company by any stretch. But my point is so much of it is driven by, like, yeah, the consumers may at different times over a decade. Sometimes it's like fish jumping out of the water. It's easier to catch them. You just can't catch enough of them. And other times, like, hey, you gotta find a way to, like, shock that water and force them to jump out. Like, either way, like, the point is like, if you believe that you can drive the sales and you create that type of culture, you will find a way to continue to grow. Home improvement is not going anywhere. The industry only gets bigger. The way in which you go about it may shift a little bit. And sometimes you may be more of an events company. And then COVID hits. There's not that many events out there, and you've got to pivot a little bit to be, hey, maybe I should diversify into digital. And then the election year pops up, and you're like, hey, cut back on like, it's constantly that. But as long as you're willing to, like, do that, and once again, I'll go back to that lead nurturing process. Like, build a really solid lead nurturing process. I'm a consumer. I hire contractors all the time. And I'm at a point, Greg, where I give them such a benefit of the doubt. Like, I will make sure that, like, their hours of operation, I'll call them at 9 o'clock. Like, I want to give them every chance to give me the estimate. But I am still mind boggled today of how many people don't ask for the business, don't follow up, don't even, like, try to build a relationship and sell. And I'm like, come on, like, it's going to take a little bit more than that to, like, convince me to spend $30,000 with you. So, I mean, a lot of this is just basics. And if you just stick to the basics over time and find a way to scale, like, you'll crush it. There's so much business out there.
So if you can bring us home here, we're coming a little short on time. What are you most excited about that's to come here at Modernize?
There's a couple things. One, Uh, because we're under the Quinstreet umbrella, our marketing muscle just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And really, what that means for really established partnerships is, if we could help a company do 10 million, in 2020, now we're helping them do 20 million in 2024. If it was 50, now it's 80. So our marketing muscle continues to grow, which just means those partnerships, we're able to be a much more meaningful partner from a revenue perspective. I would say the other thing too is we're just continuing to expand into categories. So roll back a couple years, we weren't in tree services, we weren't in foundations, we weren't in plumbing, and now we're expanding that. And really the benefit that provides, other than more contractors we can work with, is a lot of our current companies, as you well know, they do a lot of different categories. And so sometimes we're not in those other categories. And as we flex into those categories, we can be a more meaningful partner. I'd say the last piece too is like we really invest heavily in the training of our people. So I've been overlooking the sales side of the division for the last 6 months, and lots of work to be done there. But the hope would be is that I can continue to calibrate the sales team to be more consultative, do a better job in setting expectations. And we do the same thing on the account management. So the resources we throw at the customer facing side of our business, we only double down year over year. And so I think when you start to add all those things together, it just means we can partner with more brands, be a more meaningful partner, and drive more revenue. And those are, typically things CEOs want to hear.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I mean, I appreciate you joining us. And, looking at it from your perspective, you founded Modernize, right? You built your baby up. You successfully exited it, sold it to QuinStreet, I should say. And I think when I was selling windows in the house, I would say, look, you build rapport. And then all of a sudden, if they respected me and they thought I was a high level caliber person, I used my story to say, hey, look, this is what I've choose to do, because now that I'm in the door, I'm able to see how the company operates.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the proof is kind of in the pudding with Modernize today, where you've gone through that whole process, you've sold the company, now you're still there working and bridging that gap, continuing to build Modernize post acquisition, which really says that, if you wouldn't put your name on something if it wasn't going in the right direction, right? Because this is your baby. You'd want to separate as far away as possible from it and hide and cry if your brand got, destroyed. So it's a no wonder that y'all have had so much success. It's a no wonder that you're the number 5 strategic partner on Power 100's top 15 strategic partner list. And so we're super excited to kind of follow your progression and success through this year and obviously beyond. So appreciate you taking the time. I know you have a very busy schedule, and hopefully we can connect again here maybe a couple more times before the end of the year.
Yeah, I'd love it. Thanks for having me on, Greg. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. If you like this content, you'd like to see more of it and things like it, you can visit our website, power100.io. And as always, power up.